This is the story of Emma Carter, a story of fear, shadows, and the unknown. Emma Carter had always believed in fresh starts. When she left the noise of the city behind, she thought she was leaving her problems there too. Blackwood was supposed to be different. A quiet town, nestled between dark forests and endless hills. A place where she could finally write her novel and breathe again. The house she found stood on the edge of the woods, old but affordable. Its shutters hung loose. Its paint was cracked. The porch sagged as if the whole building carried the weight of forgotten years. Still, Emma told herself it had character. She convinced herself she could turn it into a home. On her first night, the silence was overwhelming. In the city, silence never existed. There were always cars, sirens, footsteps. Here, the only sound was the rustling of trees and the occasional creak of the house settling. She lit a single lamp, unpacked her typewriter, and told herself she wasn't afraid. But the shadows stretched long in Blackwood. As she sat at her desk, a faint tapping echoed from the hallway. She froze. The sound came again. 3 sharp taps, then silence. Her heart pounded as she stepped out with a flashlight. The hallway was empty. The doors were closed. Nothing moved. "Old houses make sounds," she whispered, forcing herself to believe it. She returned to her desk, but the words wouldn't come. Her fingers hovered above the keys, trembling. And then she saw it. The faint outline of a handprint on the dusty window pane beside her. Too large to be her own. Fresh as if someone had pressed against the glass just moments before. Emma's breath caught. She spun around, searching the room. Nothing. The forest outside was still. That night, she left the lamp burning until dawn. The days in Blackwood moved slower than Emma expected. On her second morning, she walked into town to buy groceries. The main street was small, lined with an old diner, a hardware store, and a single grocery shop. People stared when she entered. Not rudely, just long enough to make her feel like an outsider. The cashier, an older woman with pale eyes, scanned Emma's items in silence. Then, without looking up, she whispered, "That house of yours. You should keep the windows locked at night." Emma froze. "Excuse me?" The woman finally met her gaze, her lips tightening into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You'll understand soon." The walk back felt heavier. The trees seemed to lean closer over the road, their branches tangled like black fingers. That night, Emma sat at her desk again, determined to write. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. She took a deep breath, touched the keys, when the tapping returned. 3 sharp knocks. From the hallway. Emma's skin prickled. She forced herself to stand, her flashlight trembling in her hand. The hallway stretched long and dark, each door shut tight. She whispered, "Who's there?" No answer, only silence. She turned back, relieved. But then the sound came again, this time from inside the walls. A slow, deliberate dragging, like fingernails running across wood. Emma pressed her ear to the wall. The sound stopped. She held her breath, waiting. Then, 3 sharp taps. So close, it felt like they came from the other side of her skull. She stumbled back, her chest tight, whispering, "It's nothing." Old houses, just old houses. But when she returned to her desk, Her typewriter was no longer where she had left it. It sat in the middle of the floor, as if someone had carefully placed it there while she was gone. The room was cold. Too cold. Emma grabbed her blanket and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow I'll ask about this place. Tomorrow I'll get answers." The next morning, Emma carried her notebook to the diner on Main Street. The smell of coffee and fried bacon filled the air, comforting enough to calm her nerves. She sat at the counter, pretending to write, while her ears caught bits of conversation. Locals talked in low voices, but they fell silent when she mentioned her new address. Finally, the waitress, a young woman named Sarah, leaned closer. "You're staying at the old Whitmore place, aren't you?" Emma nodded cautiously. "Yes. What's the story with it?" Sarah's eyes darted around before she whispered, "They say a family vanished there. No trace. No bodies. Just gone. That was 15 years ago." Emma's pen froze over the page. "Vanished?" Sarah nodded again, then straightened up quickly as an older man at a booth cleared his throat. The message was clear. Don't say more. The rest of the day, Emma couldn't shake the weight of Sarah's words. When she returned home, the house looked different, darker somehow, even in daylight. That evening, she explored the upstairs rooms. Most were empty, with peeling wallpaper and dusty floors. But one door at the end of the hall wouldn't open. She jiggled the handle. Locked. Her breath quickened. She hadn't noticed it before. She bent down, peering through the keyhole. At first, only blackness, then movement. Something shifted inside. Slow. Deliberate. Emma staggered back, her heart hammering. She tried to laugh it off. "It's my imagination. Just shadows." But when she returned downstairs, a slip of yellowed paper lay on her desk. She hadn't left it there. In shaky handwriting, the note read, "Don't open the door." Emma dropped it instantly, her hands trembling. She stared at the hallway above. The locked door seemed to breathe. That night, Emma dreamed of whispers. They curled through the darkness, voices overlapping, male, female, young, old. She couldn't understand the words, but the tone was desperate, pleading. She opened her eyes. The whispers didn't stop. They clung to the walls, bleeding into the silence of her room. Her lamp flickered violently, then went dark. She bolted upright, heart pounding. The only light came from the moon spilling through the window. Shadows stretched across the floor, shifting as if alive. Emma whispered, "Stop. Please stop." The whispers ceased, but then came the sound of a door creaking open. She turned toward the hallway. The locked door at the end stood slightly ajar, just wide enough to reveal darkness inside. Emma shook her head. "No. I didn't touch it. I didn't." The next morning, she forced herself into routine. Coffee, writing, pretending everything was normal. But the words on her page twisted into shapes she didn't write. Sentences that read, "It's waiting. You cannot leave." Emma slammed the notebook shut, her breath shallow. She stormed outside, desperate for air. The forest loomed tall, the branches swaying though the wind was still. She thought she saw movement among the trees, figures watching her, pale faces peeking between the trunks. That night, the nightmares returned. This time she stood in the upstairs hallway, staring at the locked door. A child's voice whispered from inside, "Emma, help us." She woke, gasping, drenched in sweat. But when she sat up, she saw footprints on the floor, small, dusty prints leading from the hallway into her bedroom. They stopped at the foot of her bed. Emma hadn't slept. The footprints at the end of her bed haunted her, burned into her mind with every blink. By morning, her nerves were raw, her hands trembling as she poured coffee she couldn't drink. She stared at the hallway, at the door, the one that had been locked since her first night. Whispers curled in her ears even when the house was silent. She could almost hear her name, drawn out, beckoning. By noon, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed the rusted hammer from the toolbox she'd found in the shed. The handle felt heavy, foreign, but her grip tightened. Enough, she whispered to herself. No more hiding. The floor groaned beneath her steps as she climbed the stairs. The air grew colder the closer she came, her breath clouding in front of her lips. The door loomed at the end of the hall, its paint peeling, the old brass knob glinting faintly in the dim light. Emma raised the hammer. For a moment, she hesitated, every instinct screaming to stop, to turn away. But she swung anyway. The sound cracked through the house like a gunshot. Wood splintered. The lock groaned but held. She struck again and again. The third hit shattered the lock. The door creaked open slowly, as though it had been waiting. Emma's chest heaved. Her flashlight beam cut through the dark, trembling with her hand. Inside, the room was wrong. Dust floated thick in the air, but the furniture was untouched. An old crib, a rocking chair, shelves lined with toys that hadn't seen light in decades. Everything preserved, as if frozen in time. The smell hit her next. Sweet at first, then sour. Rotten. Emma covered her mouth, gagging. On the far wall, words were scratched deep into the plaster. Over and over, the same phrase. Let us out. The rocking chair shifted. Once. Twice. Slowly back and forth, though no one sat in it. Emma's legs went weak. She stumbled backward, her flashlight beam catching something in the crib. A doll. Its porcelain face cracked, its eyes painted black. But as she stared, the doll's head turned, just slightly, toward her. Emma gasped, dropping the flashlight. The room plunged into darkness. Emma clutched the book tightly, her arms aching from the weight, not just of leather and pages, but of the knowledge and darkness it carried. The basement stretched endlessly, walls folding and twisting. Shadows lunged at her with every step, their whispers sharp, insistent. You cannot leave. You belong. She ran. Her flashlight flickered, barely illuminating the warped stairs ahead. Every step echoed like a drumbeat of doom. Dust swirled in the air, forming shapes, faces, hands, mouths screaming silently. The whispers became roars. The walls pulsed, breathing, alive, closing in. Emma slammed her shoulder into the railing, breaking it free, clambering upward. Her feet slipped on the warped wood, and she fell hard, scraping her hands and knees. A shadow wrapped around her ankle. She kicked violently, sending it recoiling into the darkness. The book pulsed against her chest, hot and alive. The whispers changed tone, curious now, almost pleading. She reached the top of the stairs. The hallway stretched before her, impossibly long, darker than ever. The locked door she had broken earlier was ajar again, the handle twisting slowly as if beckoning her back inside. Emma gasped. She realized the truth. The house wasn't just alive, it was hungry. And opening the door, touching the book, had fed it. It wanted more. She ran down the hall, the shadows thickening, following. Each step forward became a struggle, the air heavy, the floor trembling beneath her. Suddenly, the door behind her slammed shut. She spun. Nothing. Only darkness and whispers. Ahead, the front door gleamed faintly, moonlight spilling through the glass. Freedom. Emma sprinted, every muscle burning. The shadows surged, clawing, pulling at her legs, her arms, her very mind. She leapt forward, her hands on the doorknob. The whispers screamed in fury. The door shook violently, as if the house itself tried to keep her inside. With a final, desperate push, Emma tore it open. Cold night air flooded in, carrying the scent of pine and earth. She stumbled onto the porch, falling hard, her chest heaving. Behind her, the house groaned, a deep, guttural sound of disappointment and hunger. Emma didn't look back. She ran down the path, past the black forest, past the twisted trees, until the town lights glimmered ahead. But even in the safety of the street lamps, she could feel it. The house watching, waiting. And the book under her arm pulsed faintly, as if whispering, "This isn't over." Emma returned to the house as night fell, the book heavy under her arm. The forest outside whispered in the wind, shadows flickering between the trees. She didn't look back. She knew the house was waiting, alive, hungry, aware. Inside, the air was thick, suffocating. The floorboards groaned underfoot. Shadows moved along the walls, writhing, reaching. The locked door at the end of the hall, her first doorway into this nightmare, stood open, blackness spilling from within. Emma set the book on the floor, flipping to the final ritual. The instructions were clear: a binding, a containment, a seal. It would take every ounce of her courage and strength to complete. She began, chanting softly, tracing the symbols with chalk across the floor. The air pulsed, thick and heavy, reacting to her words. Shadows twisted, shrieking in rage, clawing at the walls, the ceiling, the floors. "You cannot stop us." Emma's voice rang louder. "I can, and I will." The floorboards shivered. The walls flexed like muscles. From the upstairs hallway came a chorus of voices. The Whitmore family trapped within, warning, crying, urging her forward. She pressed on. Sweat ran down her face. The shadows lunged, reaching, trying to snatch the chalk, the book, her very hands. Emma felt herself pulled, dragged into darkness. But she held fast. Fear became fuel. Focus became armor. Finally, the ritual neared its climax. She shouted the last incantation, her voice echoing through the house, vibrating in every corner, every wall, every shadow. The shadows screamed, a terrible, ear-splitting howl, and recoiled. They twisted violently, writhing as if trapped in invisible chains. The house groaned, shook, then fell silent. Emma collapsed to the floor, chest heaving, the book closed before her. The air was still, heavy but calm. The locked door was solid once more. The shadows had retreated. The house's hunger had been stilled, for now. But she knew, deep down, that Blackwood's darkness was patient. The shadows were cunning. The house would wait, bide its time. Emma rose slowly, brushing herself off. She had won this battle, but the war was far from over. And as she stepped into the cold night air, The book pulsed faintly in her hands, whispering softly, "Until next time." Emma stood at the edge of the forest, the cold night air biting at her skin. The house loomed behind her, silent now, still, but she could feel its presence, waiting, watching, patient. The book rested heavy in her hands, a heartbeat of darkness. She had survived, had fought, had sealed the shadows, for now. But she knew the truth. Darkness like this never truly dies. It waits. It learns. It remembers. Blackwood was quiet again, the streets empty under the pale moonlight. Yet every rustle of leaves, every creak of a distant branch, whispered reminders of what lurked just beyond the veil of sight. Emma took a deep breath. Her journey had changed her. Fear no longer controlled her. Knowledge, courage, and will guided her steps. Yet as she glanced down at the book, the symbols on its cover seemed to shimmer faintly. A whisper, soft, almost teasing, curled in her mind. Until next time. Emma shivered, but she did not run. She would be ready. The shadows of Blackwood were still there, lurking, waiting for another moment, another door, another soul. And Emma Carter, writer, survivor, witness, had learned one undeniable truth. Some stories never truly end. They linger. They watch. And sometimes they wait for you to write the next chapter.